Aloha. Welcome to Kokua Council. Today we welcome our guest, Ms. Anna Jackson. We are doing a program today called Keeping Our Kupuna Safe, which is something I think we all need to be aware of as we get older and for our elders. And we are presenting a topic that will be specifically on issues regarding elder abuse and elder crimes against elders, and the awareness that we all need to have to help prevent this. So today we have Ms. Anna Jackson, who's a Deputy Prosecuting Attorney and the Elder Abuse Division Team Captain at the City and County of Honolulu's Office of the Prosecuting Attorney. And with that, I'm going to go right to Anna to start the presentation, and I want to thank her for participating with us today.
Thank you very much, Greg. And I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation. And please, if you have any questions throughout my presentation, feel free to ask. We are the Elder Abuse Unit, which is embedded in the Special Prosecution Division of the Department of Prosecuting Attorney for the City and County of Honolulu, State of Hawaii. This is Prosecuting Attorney Stephen S. and this is a statement that came from him. Many of our kupuna are vulnerable. They can be targets of physical and financial abuse. They deserve special protection. That's why we have a special elder abuse unit within the Department of Prosecuting Attorney. Its mission is to protect victims of crime by holding those responsible accountable. Throughout this presentation, we will discuss some of the types of crimes that our unit handles. A brief disclaimer. The views expressed by this presenter, me, are not necessarily those of the Honolulu Office of the Prosecuting Attorney. I'm not sure if you know this, but there is a World Elder Abuse Awareness Day that's on June the 15th of every year. And for this particular day, it's recognized that elder abuse can lead to serious physical injuries and long-term psychological consequences. Elder abuse is predicted to increase as many countries are experiencing rapidly aging populations. And the global population of people aged 60 years and older is increasing by 38% from 1 billion in 2019 to about 1.4 billion in 2030. The resource for this information is from the United Nations. We asked the question, what is elder abuse? According to the National Council on Aging, elder abuse can include the following: physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, financial exploitation, and confinement. The perpetrators range. It can include spouses, children, and other family members, as well as staff at nursing homes, assisted living, and other facilities. Sadly, only 4% of all elder abuse is reported. These are some statistics from our office. While we receive a lot of calls from the public and we receive cases from the Honolulu Police Department, only certain types of cases can be charged as crimes. These are the violent types of cases that we see. From 2024, we charged 3 murders, 2 of which were attempted murders. There were no manslaughters. We had 6 assault in the first degrees, 52 assault in the second degrees, robberies, 14 of those, for a total of 75. So there are a lot of violent crimes that impact our kupuna. Regarding property offenses, we have theft in the first degrees, there are 2. Theft in the second degree, there were 8. There are 7 burglaries. Unauthorized control of propelled vehicles, which means basically an auto theft, which is 2, and unauthorized entry into a motor vehicle, there are 5. That's entering into a motor vehicle and with an intent to commit a crime within that vehicle, for a total of 24 property offenses for last year's statistics. In looking at our financial crimes that were charged, we only had 4 total: theft of 1 and credit card offenses of 3. This is somewhat surprising, but this is what came to our office through HPD. And just as a side note, which is a very important note to make, our unit works hand in hand with the Honolulu Police Department. And the way we become familiar, or, we become aware of cases, is through the Honolulu Police Department. When we get calls from the public about any types of crime, our first thing to do is to refer them to the police department to make a report. So the question is, why does elder abuse go unreported? Here are some reasons why. Well, perhaps it's shame and embarrassment, or it's a disability or medical condition, worries of not being believed, fear or retaliation against themselves, their property, or even their pets, distress of losing independence, or concerns of losing friends and families. We do have cases that are reported to us that family members don't want to prosecute because it's, a grandchild or a daughter or a son, and they don't want to have any kind of problems in the family, or, they just don't want their son, daughter, grandchild to be prosecuted. So those become very hard cases for us when we have uncooperative victims, but it's real concerns when we have our victims are, within a family, and you're seeing there's abuse going on. What are signs to look for elder abuse? As we discussed previously, there are many types of abuse: the physical neglect, financial, emotional, sexual, and abandonment. So here are some signs that NIH provides for us. Well, they may seem depressed, confused, or withdrawn, isolated from friends and family. You have unexplained bruises, burns, or scars. Appears dirty, underfed, dehydrated, over or under medicated, and not receiving needed care for medical problems. Perhaps there's bed sores or other preventable conditions, or recent changes in banking or spending patterns. Regarding potential abusers, again, we did discuss this earlier. So care providers, we've had cases involving like home health care providers, or care providers in general, a new relationship, a neighbor, or contractors, lawyers, or realtors. And so, especially in the contractor situation where an elder kupuna would like to, fix something or renovate a part of their home, and the contractor takes the money and doesn't do the work. Now, financial exploitation. This is very hard situation for our kupuna because they're living off of fixed income and their life savings. And, we have cashing checks without permission. A lot of our Kupunas still use the traditional writing a check and may have checks at, in the home, forging signatures, stealing money, either cash or card, a coercion to sign documents, improper use of power of attorney, taking from a joint account, and scams. Scams is a growing area, and we don't necessarily handle scams in our unit unless we can link it to like a theft type of a charge. So scams is a little complicated area that we'll touch upon in a little bit here. And regarding the improper use of power of attorney, when we get the calls about that, we often do like a referral saying, this is more of like a civil matter that our office can't, we can't address that particular issue. So we take calls, we listen. We also encourage the Honolulu police officers out there to listen to any concerns of our kupuna, and hopefully they can get the help that they need. Here are some scams that are out there, and of course there's a lot more than this, but we have the Nigerian print scam. The scammer pretends to be a very wealthy person, promises a large sum of money, but then they want to be paid first. So that's the trap. And then you have the phishing scams. The scammer pretends to be a company that you have an account with and asks you to provide your password and other personal information. And that's one of the key things with these scams is providing like personal information, fake account information, like social securities, date of births, over the phone to people that, you're not familiar with. So that's for phishing. Cryptocurrency is another area. The scammer pretends to be an investor or a business person, suggests that you send them money in exchange for cryptocurrency. And in this particular category, just kind of taking advantage of some kupuna that maybe are not well versed in cryptocurrency or in, computers and technology. Government imposters. The scammer pretends to be a government agency and says that you owe taxes or some kind of fee, and the kupuna just makes payment that way. Online relationships. This is a pretty sad category where the scammer pretends to be someone interested in starting a relationship and then, asks for money. Fraudulent sales. The scammer pretends to be a business and makes fake offers for goods and services. Money is exchanged and no goods or services are provided. And embarrassing blackmail. This is one out there where you get scammer sends emails with pictures of you or your home and threatens to share them, embarrassing information unless you pay money. So it always boils down to like money and taking money from our kupuna. Here are some prevention. Number one, never give personal information to a stranger. Number two, ignore suspicious phone calls. I think nowadays, a lot of our phone calls that we'll get is pretty, having a cell phone is very common. And the phone numbers may be marked spam. But if you don't recognize the phone number, it's best to just ignore the phone number. Or, they may leave a voice message for you if it's somebody that you know and you can call them back. Watch the news, see what's out there, what's going on in your community. Read the newspaper. And now there's online newspapers. Some people still get the traditional newspaper delivered to their homes. And be very mindful of your surroundings. In terms of the last tip is more for situational awareness. If you're walking on a road, just be careful of the types of bags you have. If you carry like a purse, those bags that you have that can strap around your torso and they're smaller in size. Those are good. The smaller the better. Be careful of the lighting and the environments that you're walking in. My mother, she does a lot of walking, so I'm always telling her just be very careful. And she has a whistle, so that's one thing that I think is kind of like a good idea to have like a whistle, so in case you encounter something that's dangerous, you can blow a whistle. And also letting people know like where you're gonna be. But mainly like the time of the day, just be very, very careful of where you're walking and your surroundings. So this is us, the Elder Abuse Unit. We're a 24/7 hotline. So it's not really a hotline, it's like a beeper. And we are a specialized unit that vertically prosecutes cases involving victims 60 years and older. And we also work extensively to educate and inform our Kupuna about financial fraud. So we do carry a 24/7 beeper. We rotate it. We're a very small unit, but we work hard to seek justice for our Kupuna in our community that has been wronged. In terms of prosecution, I just wanted to go through this with you and the types of evidence that we look for. And we look at, did the suspect admit that he or she knew the victim was 60 years of age or older at the time that the crime was committed? Did the victim disclose his or her age to the suspect? Did the victim have access to information that referenced the victim's age? Did the suspect and victim know each other? Did the suspect target the victim because of the victim's age? Does the victim appear to be 60 years of age or older? So these are some questions that we look at when we're screening cases to charge it. And when the answer is yes, our unit gets involved and we'll be able to charge a suspect with a crime against a kupuna. So that concludes the formal part of my presentation. I'm going to go ahead and pull it down now. And I'm open for questions.
Well, I hate to jump in, but I'm going to jump in. I have a bunch of questions, but let me ask one. You covered those cyber crimes, right? And I have a friend who was convinced on Facebook that her friend Jason Momoa was, had her send hundreds of dollars. And then we stopped her. We convinced her that it wasn't really Jason Momoa. It was hard in this case because she and Jason had actually met in person because she was a Hawaiian activist. But is there anything, this guy's probably not in Hawaii. He might not even be in the United States. Is there anything the law can do to this guy?
So I know that the federal government has a reporting website. I know like you can report fraud to the Federal Trade Commission. And at the last presentation that I was at, the U.S. attorney was there and she did her presentation and she shared a website that they have that you can present. You could input those types of cases. So because there's a federal question involved where it's like federal crime, somebody outside of the state, maybe even outside of the country, it takes it to like the federal level where prosecution would go there. It's quite hard for like a city and county state level office to prosecute that.
Well, if no, I have another question. Oh, I see Sherry wants to ask something. You have to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I just want, because in the beginning when we're looking at those figures
Yes.
and they were so low. I mean, I was it's very surprising, like you said, it's very surprising, and that you get those numbers from the police department.
We get the numbers from our office. So what I do is I request a data presentation, like data report from our stats, from somebody that does our stats. So they go into our system here and they look at what our unit has charged this year.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that we only got 54 solved.
Right.
It means that we may have gotten 150, but given the types of case, given the facts of the case, or the complainants may not have been, the victims may not have been cooperative. It boils down to, can we prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt? And so of the cases that were charged, it ends up being, you know, those are the ones that we can prove in the court.
Okay. Yeah, so my question is, do you have a tally of callers by either category, just by the types of calls? Because I know with the Generations articles that Scott used to write all the time, anytime I would get calls all the time to say, oh, you know, can you tell me? And I've directed callers to your department. So I wondered if you keep a tally. Oh, I just, you know, I think my family's getting scammed, or I think this and this and this. Do you know how many calls come in? You probably get a lot a day.
We get, well, for me, I would say I get roughly one a month.
Oh.
And it varies. Since some months I get two. You know, I don't get, you know,
okay.
Usually because I'm the team captain, my legal clerk, she'll forward me the call. And so I'm the one that's taking the call.
Okay.
I'm not having the line deputies take the
call. Okay. So I guess also on your line of why, you know, how scammers, I mean, like the scams, they're embarrassed. Yeah. My parents got scammed. And you didn't mention the grandchild scam, where they go, oh, grandma, that one, Scott wrote an article. That was the biggest one. I don't know how many years back, but, you know, my parents got a call. Oh, this is so-and-so, you know, I'm stuck in Mexico. So when we see him at a party, my father says, oh, so when did you get back from Mexico? And that's how we found out he got scammed, because they won't tell us. And then they're embarrassed. But they got at least $3,000 in charge card. I mean, you know, those gift cards, Walmart gift cards or something. So I just wondered, that wasn't, but I thought that was one of the biggest ones. The scams was the grandfather one. And then my last one was, I saw your list of potential abusers, and I wondered how realtors got on there. How realtors got on the potential scammers. Have there been realtors that take property?
It's just through research and just looking at, you know, like reverse mortgage.
Oh, got it. Okay, that I understand.
Stuff like that. So it's just like just a general word, you know.
Oh, okay.
But as far as like, I've only been here since I started overseeing this unit on the November of 2023. Prior to that, I was a supervisor in trials. So since being here, I just kind of like did some research on, you know, what I'm seeing, and also with consultation with Scott Scalina.
Oh, okay, yeah, because the reverse mortgages are not realtors, so it would be mortgage companies that do that. Yeah, not realtors. I mean, I'm just being defensive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have two questions, and I don't know where the icon is for raising your hand. So, first one is the technical.
Actually, John, if you could introduce yourself, because you're a very well-known person, so that
I see that
we all know. Yeah.
Okay, I'm John McDermott, State Long Care Ombudsman with the Executive Office on Aging. So I should know how to do the hand raising, but I can't find it. Okay, so anyway, the 60 or older, kind of a technicality. So somebody who looks young, but they're being victimized. Does it make any difference if they say, "Hey, I'm 67 years old. What are you doing?" So that at least you can say, I did identify myself as 60 or older. He's going to say, "Oh, you look healthy to me. How am I supposed to know what age you are?" So should you say something?
That's a really interesting question. Because in front of a jury, I mean, that testimony will come up that you're going to be put on the stand. You're going to say that you informed the defendant that you disclosed your age, and that's how the defendant known or should have reasonably known that you were 60 and older.
I just think a crime is a crime. It doesn't matter how old, because you see on TV that they're stealing someone's purse, and then they find out, oh, he's 61. I didn't know there's. So I mean, a crime is a crime. But yeah, you wonder if they have encounters. Should I say? I mean, why would we have to say I'm 60 and over?
Well, it's part of our charging criteria and part of the current law.
Gives you more
that's the
leverage.
penalty.
Got
I
it.
think that's it, Mr.
Yeah.
McDermott.
Yeah, so I'm 67, but if
That
I'm
is
being I'm yelling out, "I'm 67, what are you doing?"
That is
Okay,
an issue. I think it makes the case better if you state your age, but it may not equate to a conviction in front of a jury. If you really, really look like you're 55 and you're 67, I mean, it's just, and then my younger deputies, they even have a picture of a victim and saying like this person is over the age of 60 or 60 and older. Like for me, I'm closer to 60, so it's not that hard of a jump for me. So I do think the proposal for the strict liability on 65 is wonderful for us in terms of, I don't know where it's at with the ledge.
well,
I think it's
I'm sure whoever is robbing me isn't going to suddenly stop and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're a senior." But I want to make sure that person gets the penalty that they deserve. And so if you get more of a penalty because of my age, then I definitely want that in the record. The other question was just recently on the 21st, a daughter called me up. Her mom falls for every scam imaginable. And so she was asking me, how do I take control of my mom's money? So I'm trying to protect her, but of course she's going to say that I'm trying to steal from her. But this lady has spent thousands of dollars, your whole list of all the scams from the Nigerian prince to the grandkid in jail, whatever, she's fallen for every one of them. But she lives by herself. She appears competent, but exercises very poor judgment regarding finances. So the daughter was asking me, and I'm not an attorney, how can she become a guardian of the finances, conservator, when the mom is going to be opposed to that?
I don't have a response to that. And I'm not sure if Doug does, because I'm not in the civil world, and I wouldn't even try to answer that question. So if it's criminal, I could give it a fair shot, but I don't have a response to that. Sorry about that.
Could I interject just for a moment, Doug, if I could interject just on that issue that came up. There was a point in my life when I lived in California, and I went down to Southern California to film Mickey Rooney. I don't know if anyone here recalls the actor Mickey Rooney. And he was part of a documentary that I was helping produce. And he was under a conservatorship for his estate. So the family members had concerns, and there was, the brother, I think it was the sons, excuse me, the sons, I think there were two sons, didn't get along or something to that effect. I can't remember exactly. We did speak with the attorney, but there was definitely an issue there. And I'm just wondering if it's a mental decline, you have to get like a doctor to certify. I would assume that you would have to do something like that, where there would have to be a doctor involved to certify that that person is not. So does that sound about right, Anna? I'm not sure if that's something you can speak on, just in your personal thoughts.
Is that for me or is that for John?
Yes, for you.
I think that's reasonable. I mean, in our cases, sometimes we have our victims are, you know, they're subject to like an assault, and then you have like a daughter or a son that's almost a spokesperson, you know, for their mom or father, because they're not able to stand trial, and you know they have a medical doctor and an assessment. So, you know, I really am not comfortable like giving an opinion regarding conservatorships and whatnot. It's just not my area of law.
Thank you. Go ahead, Doug.
Well, I think Barbara has her hand up, so I was going to call on her. And Barbara, you do have.
Thank you, Doug. Oh, go ahead. I just wanted to ask, Anna, you said something about wearing a crossbody bag. I was told by someone in the field, and I'm sorry, I can't remember who, that it was really better not to do that if you were a woman, especially a small woman, because it's better to have a thief take your shoulder bag off your shoulder than to have them grab that crossbody bag and bring you to the ground for, you know, perhaps resulting in a hip fracture or head injury or something like that. I wondered what you thought about that.
Yeah, so you know, I've heard different things. I know the shoulder bag depends on, because that's what we see, right? We see the grab and run. You know, we see the purse snatching is the shoulder bags, and then you have somebody coming and grabbing it and running with it. Where a very small like pouch with just your ID and maybe like your cell phone. It's not really a huge crossbody purse. It's more of like a pouch, you know, with your identity and like a cell phone. So, I mean, I am not a specialist in purses or anything like that, but I looked at it, the issue, and I know just like for my mother, she uses like a small little pouch instead of like a full bag purse that she carries around with her. She's always doing that.
What about fanny packs?
Yeah, that's another option. Just something that's not like as grabbable and like pullable, you know. And if you know, you actually look like you're very, you know, you're very active, and so people that are out there kind of walking around a lot, especially in the public areas, and you know, people can come up right from behind you and just grab your stuff. And it's you know, just being situationally aware. So I was actually hoping that members of the community policing team could join us today, because they probably have more pointers as far as how the Kupuna could keep themselves safe in the community. I speak purely from knowing how my mom and my dad act in the public.
We try to get them in. We're gonna try to do another program in the future. Maybe we can bring you back also. But I did speak with Officer Yamamoto, and as you know, you know, because I emailed you. So we have a few that I have reached out to, but they weren't able to participate due to vacations or just other commitments. But we will do that in the future. I think that would be a very good element to add. And I think that's where the reports are supposed to go first, and then they get referred to your office, as you said.
Right. And a lot of my my research into like what kind of bags you should wear and all of that, it's really more about the, you know, the areas of like how we can prevent crime, prevent bad things from happening to our seniors as they're out there in the community. Because, you know, you know, I just don't think there's a lot of it just like I think you started off by saying the outreach is so important. Like, what can you do to prevent from getting injured out there and from getting scammed and having like a whistle? I don't know. That's a simple, it's an inexpensive tool to have while you're in the community. It's just a pointer.
Let's see. Let me try and pose another question. I retired last year from Hawaii Meals on Wheels, and because we got funding from both the state and city, we were what's called mandatory reporters, so that if we came across a situation where there was elder abuse, then or child abuse actually, but in this case, elder abuse, we had an obligation to report it. We got training on the signs of abuse and that sort of thing. And also, when services started, we'd get requests from the elder, him or herself, for their family, usually their kids, sometimes grandkids. Very often from neighbors said, there's a guy who lives next door, lives all alone, and I think he needs meal service. And they'd initiate the meal service. Now, for reporting, what if you're a neighbor and you have strong suspicion there's some kind of elder abuse, financial scamming going around next door? Is that something you can report? Do you guys investigate? Is it anonymous? Do I have to leave my name and that sort of thing?
So what I do when I get phone calls about, in those types of situations, I've asked them to call the police anyway, because they have like a cybercrime, white collar officers or detectives there.
Well,
Also,
what if the neighbor has a caretaker that comes every now and then, either officially or unofficially, and they suspect that they're scamming their neighbor financially, maybe charging them for stuff or getting money that they shouldn't, or property, or is that something a neighbor can report?
yes, I think that anybody can report an issue with anybody in the community. You can report it to the police department. There's also adult protective services if it's a caregiver that's involved. I've gotten calls where I've filled out the intake form with APS. If it's a caller that's calling our office, we have intake advocates here. And so I've referred calls to the intake advocates. We have two, and they will take down details, and they have referrals for different services.
Is it anonymous? Can the person remain anonymous? Because we don't want the suspected abuser to know it's
A
me.
neighbor,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
neighbor. So if the call comes to like us, then I could then become the reporting party,
I see. I see. Okay. Now I
because
had a
we know like who is potentially getting abused, financially or physically. As long as we know like the name or the address of that individual, there's an
okay.
investigation can be conducted. Or even for HPD, they could do a welfare check to see how they're doing.
Yeah, that's good to know. Now I have a question here from Dale Head. His hand's not up, so let me read his question and get your reaction to it. He says only about half of U.S. states have an abuse of power attorney law on their books. Hawaii does not have that. In Washington State, their attorney general prosecutes such cases. Dale's question goes on to ask if anybody in Hawaii would care to introduce a bill here. But any comments from you on an abuse of power of attorney law forbidding that? Because I think that's a real common form of elder abuse.
I think the only thing that I can say is that we do get calls about it. And I recognize that it is a concern. I just don't know how it falls within our scope of prosecution. That's where I guess the break is, how can that be something that's part of our unit that we can prosecute? But we get calls about that from, I just got a call the other day from a concerned daughter. Her older sibling did this and that regarding power of attorney over the mother, and it's very sad. And mom isn't in the position to say anything. So
I think there's legislation that could help with that. And I think if, obviously attorneys are under the state bar, and if they're actually, they have to do the documents usually. I don't think an average citizen can just, endorse a power of attorney. It has to be done through an attorney that's in the state. So I think if there was a process where there was oversight of that, that would be interesting. And maybe that's something the ombudsman's office could take on at some point. If there was legislation, they could, be oversight to make sure, just like things are notarized, that power of attorney is in fact clean, that there's no questionable concerns with it. That should be a process. I did see, Daisy, did you have a question earlier? So I'm going to let you go.
Thank you. I can't raise my hand either, but thank you. Very important information. I know this is just for the city of Oahu. The question is, does the state also conduct, I know they have the elderly abuse in the sense of scams, etc., which they do a great job too. I have power of attorney for my friend, which I don't abuse because he's in a condition where he might have slight dementia. So I'm doing his financing and I'm paying all his bills that's needed, making sure there's no scams because I get calls at 6 in the morning from Lanai City, Okahului, which we know is completely false. And from people that, I just got 2 phone calls to say that I just won $8.5 million for a subscription I never even heard of. So not all of us, unfortunately, are wise enough to recognize it's a scam. But I know Oahu is small, but then there are also neighbor islands. Are those also handled through their own individual island, or is it statewide that handles in this case? Because there are a lot of people. Unfortunately, most times, it's their family members that abuse because people need money for drugs, and they abuse their grandparents because they're easy to control. Unfortunately, they're the ones say, "Oh no" to the grandchild. So it's something that's happening all the time. And Mr. McDermott, thank you so much because there's a lot of people that needs help, unfortunately, and we see it all the time. Thank you.
So each island has its own prosecutor's office. So we are focused on just Oahu, the city and County of Honolulu. I'm not sure if that was your question, Daisy.
Yes, thank you. But then is there a case where something happens statewide, say a family members on one island and then the senior elderly person is on another island? And then, it's happened between islands. Is that where the state might come in? I'm not sure. Thank you.
We also have the attorney general's office, and they have their own criminal unit too. So they also may take cases involving like financial crimes.
Okay, thank you.
I have another question. Unless somebody else here, I don't want to hog the mic here. I wanted to flip the script a little bit. We treat, and this is becoming more and more a sore spot with me the older I get. People treat older elders, seniors, as though they're helpless or incompetent or need help and that sort of thing. What if and you know what we're afraid of, a lot of us, especially those of us in care, is that we're being over-medicated. So what if you're an elder in a situation, you have a caretaker, or you're in one of these homes, facilities, and you feel like, you know what, they're giving me this drug just to knock me out and get me out of the way. Is that something I can report directly? And then, I might not even be conscious a lot of the times if you try and get back to me. How do you handle that sort of complaint?
That's an interesting fact pattern because it's essentially you're being over medicated, so it'd be hard for you to report it for yourself. Is that what it is?
Yeah, you might have a moment where, maybe you didn't take your medication just to be able to stay awake and make a complaint, but you know.
So, you definitely should report it to the police department. And I'm not quite, I'm still new to this position, so is the Department of Health also would be triggered in this case since it's a facility?
Yeah, I could jump in on this a little bit. So, the Long-Term Care Ombudsman program, we have both volunteers and we have limited staff. We have positions vacant right now. And so we're supposed to go to all of these homes at least once a quarter. The problem is that if you see a resident and they seem sedated, okay. I mean, there's sometimes legitimate reasons why somebody is sedated. So you'd have to take a look at the medical record to find out what meds are they on. You'd have to ask the caregiver, why is this person on these medications? And if you're only going there once a quarter, you don't really see a pattern that, gee, this person is always sedated. That looks a little bit suspicious. So it's a very difficult thing to investigate. I mean, one thing that we don't have, which I would like, is a memorandum of agreement or understanding with the prosecutor's office that if they get a call and they feel that there's not enough evidence, they cannot prosecute, they can't really do anything. If they could still give us that information, we could go to that home and kind of put it on our little visit this facility a little bit more often to find out, is something really going on or not? Sometimes residents are very noisy and the neighbors are complaining and the police are showing up. And so the caregiver calls up the doctor and says, I need, Mellaril, Haldol, Seroquel, whatever, antipsychotic medications that really are not supposed to be used for seniors because they're not psychotic. They're just have dementia. But they get those medications just so that the neighbors stop calling the police. And so that is a form of abuse because that's not what the medications were meant to do. But yeah, it's very, very difficult to investigate something like that.
I visit someone at the Leahi Hospital, the long-term, and I've realized that he seemed a little, like you said, lethargic and stuff when I visit. So what I did, number one, is to text the daughter to say, this is my findings, because she lives on the mainland. So she told me, yes, he has to be medicated certain times because he gets up and moves around and he's a bigger person. So the nurses are having trouble, taking care of him. So I would say every time I visit him for the past year, he's been in bed. So I don't know, but I do ask the family first because they should know, right, before I want to go further. But that's one of the things is, find out from the actual source before you start accusing someone of something. Although he looks like that all the time now, so I don't know what to do. But the family agrees with how he's being medicated for the purpose of not harming himself and anyone else in there. So I can understand both sides.
I have a question. Low hand here. So, I'm aware, not from here, but when I was living in California, of a situation where there was an elder across the hall from me, and she didn't have any family that lived in the area, but she had befriended someone that, and maybe there was some romantic thing when they were younger, but He would just come and he was kind of bringing her some groceries or something. And in the beginning, when I first met her, they would go out occasionally, but then she was not really able to go out much. So she was more at home. She was a hoarder. And it was very concerning to me when I saw what happened when she was medicated after coming out of the hospital and she had a medical situation because of it. And she ended up going back into the hospital and passing away. They took her away on a stretcher. But he actually administered the medication to her. It was a sleeping pill. And she should never have had a sleeping pill. And then shortly after, I advocated, but without making this a long story, which is already a long story, there was no will that was signed, but he somehow presented something. And I actually went to court. Her wishes were for her money and things to go to the church and give it away. But he swooped in and did some things with taking all her possessions. And I reported this to the right departments and to the police. And there was even a sticker on the door, and he went into the apartment. The point I'm making is it wasn't a good experience, and the proper authorities didn't do the proper thing, and even the court didn't address it properly. Is that the situation in Hawaii? Because my experience in Hawaii, to be quite frank, I don't want to be disrespectful to the office, but I hear it because I'm a Waikiki neighborhood board member, and I serve on this board and another board. But I do hear story that there's not a lot of prosecution. There's a lot of difficulty in reporting, and I've had difficulty in reporting some concerns where there's elder abuse here at my condo association. I'm about to be one of those elders in August when I turn 60. So do you know that I know you mentioned stats earlier, and it was concerning that the numbers were very low. Do you know really, is there traction? Is there enforcement? I know you're in this role now, so you're going to be on the hot seat, but it really is one of the most important things. And I think our long-term care ombudsman would agree that if we have the office and we have HPD and nobody's really doing much except it's getting reported and you guys are presenting and putting statistics, what really are we doing for our Kupuna? I mean, there's a limited amount of prosecution. We need more. So if you could, I know I just put you on the hot seat, but you could answer that.
I mean, I would like to guarantee you that after this experience of being your guest speaker today, that, I would convey to my deputies that we need to be, charging more cases. The other thing is we always have to think about the legal standard to which we hold ourselves to. It's proof beyond a reasonable doubt. I know that HPD, they do their best. I'm actually working a case right now. It's a lockup case. I'm going to be charging it. I think the other issue is the complainants are not, a lot of them don't want to prosecute. So it's a difficult climate right now, there's a lot of limited resources. I have a very small team. HPD is also stretched thin, but it is our jobs to protect the community. So I apologize that, if Waikiki is suffering in terms of lack of prosecution in cases. And, I hope that our numbers, what I didn't show you is the numbers from 2022 and 2023. And so the stats actually have gotten better. The cases, they're looking better in terms of the numbers. And I'm going to do a presentation tomorrow at the academy. And I'm trying to get the officers to do what they need to do to work up these cases early, like when they're in training. And I've been doing, once a quarter, I go to the academy and train the new recruits. But it's a very, very, I don't have the right answer or the greatest answer for you. I agree with you though. I agree that we do need to prosecute more. It's just very difficult.
It's difficult. I know it's difficult. And I think at the end of the day, and I'll circle back to our long-term care ombudsman and to your office, but I think what we need to do is have legislation where there's really legislation and a law that helps, especially where we were just talking about power of attorney, and just a process for people so that there's a law that is easily understandable, and we can then kind of comply with that, hopefully, and it's enforced. I know there's many laws, but unfortunately, it's difficult because you've got so many elements with family members and proof and medical. I mean, the medical alone, I think, and I think
And then the age
maybe
is an
yeah,
issue too, because the jury, if somebody doesn't look 60, but we charge it as 60 and older because and a kupuna got injured. But if a
Right.
jury doesn't believe that this person is a kupuna, then we'll get a misdemeanor instead of a felony. And so it's even like in the community, it's not taken seriously, but there's a struggle there. So I did mention the 65 as being like a strict liability number. That is a really, really great idea as far as having the law reflect that if you cause a crime against a kupuna that's 65 years of age and older, it's strict liability. I think that's great.
could I have one follow-up. Could either you or John McDermott or both of you maybe just say something on the medical records, because I know what comes into play often when there might be considered undue influence or some kind of elder abuse, and someone needs medical records to prove that that person is, not of sound mind or some other issue, maybe a medical issue that's impacting their thought process also. How do you address those with your office in prosecution and also in the long-term your ombudsman's office if those issues come up and you're an advocate for those? And one or both of you can chime in.
For our purposes, if it's somebody who's already like incapacitated, we can go by subpoena ducis tecum to get medical records. So we'll just go that way because we can't get like a waiver to get the medical records. So we have a mechanism to do that. So that's what we do for criminal prosecution cases. It's very akin to what happens when you're dealing with somebody who's a decedent. You go by next of kin and you kind of go, you get the records even if a person is not there to help you get them. So that's what we would do.
Well, we have access to all medical records by federal law. So when we're in a facility, we can request right there to review the medical records. But that doesn't always solve the problem. And I can give you an example. I was at a foster home, and one of my volunteers is fluent in Korean. He's Korean American. And this lady who was Korean, when she came here, she worked in the hotel industry, and she learned English, and she wanted her children to be good Americans, so she never taught them how to speak Korean. And now that she's much older, she has forgotten how to speak English. And so she only speaks Korean, so her kids can't talk to her and she can't talk to them. And so luckily, our ombudsman was able to do the translating back and forth. But she was living in this foster home, and she'd be yelling for water, or I have to go to the bathroom, whatever. And in her mind, she was yelling in English, but she wasn't. She was yelling in Korean. And the Filipino caregiver didn't understand what she was saying. And when this lady felt that she was being ignored, she would start banging on the wall of her bedroom. She'd be throwing things because why aren't you not getting me to the bathroom? And so the caregiver would call up the doctor and say, she's really out of control. I've got to have stronger medications. And the doctor would write the order without actually coming there to examine this lady or provide some kind of a translator. And so in the medical record, there's a doctor's order for this very strong medication. And whenever the daughter would come to visit, mom looks like she's peacefully sleeping. but she's always peacefully sleeping. And so, we have this communication problem. That's really what it was. So it wasn't necessarily that this is a bad caregiver, but she just didn't know what this lady was asking for. And when you're using strong antipsychotic medications, you have to have a doctor's order. It's supposed to be limited duration. You're supposed to show that you've tried other methods before going to the drugs. What kind of behavior modification, did you bring in some kind of a translator so that you could maybe talk to this lady and figure out what was going on? But the medications is really supposed to be the very last resort. And you're always supposed to be trying to reduce the dosage and eventually eliminate the dosage. Now that by federal law is the way it's supposed to be done in a nursing home. Unfortunately, the regulations that we have for care homes and foster homes are not that specific. And so people get on a medication and they just stay on that medication until they die. And so, I don't know if I would go so far as to say that it's a form of abuse, but I would say that we can do better.
Yeah, I would go so far as to say that I think it's a form of abuse, but that's my personal opinion. I'm an anti-drug person too. I don't take any drugs unless I absolutely need it, but I really am concerned about people who are on antipsychotic medication or any kind of those drugs, because we've seen what it can do. And sadly, we see stories about people in Robin Williams was one that was a story that I believe what he was taking contributed to what happened and death. But in any event, we've got one or two new people that have joined since we started. And so what we're doing right now is we're fielding questions. And if you have a question for Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Ms. Anna Jackson from the Prosecutor's Office, or even today we've got the Long-Term Care Ombudsman John McDermott with us. By all means, raise your hand, or if you can't do that, speak up, unmute yourself. And I do have a couple more questions, so if no one else does, I will offer one or two more questions. Let's see anything. So what I'm going to do, Anna, is I've got a couple of things just to go over, and we can try to close out with these. And if anyone else has anything, please step up and raise your hand. I'll actually stop, and if someone else has something they want to say. I want to ask you about an Apple support text. And the reason I'm going to ask that, we didn't really talk about text messages. We did talk about phishing and scams, but it seems to be that even on my phone, I'm getting things recently on my iPhone. But my cousin told me yesterday, she lives in Philadelphia, she's a paralegal, that she actually was fooled by this. So she got an Apple support text and she actually charged something to her credit card. Maybe it was saying that you owe some money for your account. I know some of us have accounts where we've got our cloud storage or something like that. So that's one I'm wondering about. And how does your office address these? Do you have a separate group? Is it you or a separate group in your office that actually looks at the cryptocurrency, the phishing, the technical things that our Kupuna are facing, or
We
anybody?
do have a white collar crime unit. And it's just like 3 people. They're a very small unit, and it's headed by Isla Weiss. And so that, the Apple text that you received, or your sister, is it your relative
My cousin, yes.
or your cousin? So that would be, I've never heard of it before. I actually have an Apple phone. So, I could easily have fallen for that as well. There's a lot of new scams that are coming out, and it's scary, text.
It is. Yeah, I see them daily. On my email, I don't know if anyone else is experiencing this, but almost daily I get something that I know is a phishing or fraud scam, and it'll say like my AT&T Yahoo email, you've got to do something to update your account, but you don't. And so I just throw those in a folder, I call them spam fraud. I save them, but I don't have time to act on. I mean, there's just so many of them. I've reported some of them, but it's daily. And I can understand as we get older too, that at some point I pray that I don't click on something, but God forbid that I do someday. So that's a concern.
So we do, yeah, yes, yes. So we do have a white collar crime unit.
And is that within the prosecutor's office or it is in your office?
It's here and they have one or two detectives or officers at HPD that specialize in white collar crime, cyber crime.
Right, right. I think one of them is Stephen, I think is his last name. Does that sound right? Or you don't?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure.
I don't want to say if I'm not sure of the name, but I
I
think
can
that's
ask though.
okay. I've spoken to him before. And then I did want to ask you a question regarding statistics. We saw the statistics show the numbers were low as far as reports of things, lower than we would expect because we have a lot of elders on the islands and we know there's issues happening. We're just talking about some here. And if we just take our little small sampling of the group that we have and we're aware of things and you expand that, you know that those numbers can't be accurate. So you say that most of this is probably because they're not being reported or underreported. And I would agree with that, a lot of that. But if you were to opine on the underreporting and just from your knowledge of the islands, if you've been here for a little bit, would you say that I don't know, I don't want to have you quantify it, but I'd like to put something to it. There's a way to quantify and just try to say, would you say there's hundreds of cases or maybe 1,000 cases that might go underreported? Just a rough guess. I mean, I would say there's a lot. I don't know if I could put a number to it.
Oh, that's so
Do you agree?
difficult.
There's quite probably
So
a
the
lot.
numbers that you saw were strictly the felonies. What you didn't see is the misdemeanors and petty misdemeanors. So I think there's a whole lot more. There's a lot of misdemeanor assaults on elders, like Kupuna, that were impacted by like misdemeanor and petty misdemeanor crimes. I didn't have any of those stats for you. I
Okay, that helps. Okay. Thank you.
strictly like the felony level. So we would add a few hundred if you had like, a picture of the misdemeanor or petty misdemeanors. So there's
Okay, and then I know, and I don't need to interrupt, but I just want to get in at the right point. I know misdemeanors in our state can actually be things that in other states might be considered a felony. So unfortunately, and we know that even theft of property, I don't know what the new number is, but it was around 900 and something dollars. You could go into, I've seen it. I watched someone walk out of Target. They went in, they took a LCD screen or something and they walked out. I was trying to report it, but I didn't intervene where I tackled the person. I could have. But I helped to, report it, get photos, and I reported it. But what would you say for financial, like, could someone steal like $500 from an elder and that would be just a misdemeanor? Maybe you could just give us at least a little bit of a flavor of that.
So that's a theft in the second degree. The threshold for the theft in the first degree for an elder is 750. If it's not, it's all in the statute when the statute changed in 2021. The issue with those cases is that the perpetrator needed to have known that the theft involved an elder, like the property that they were taking belonged to the elder person,
Right.
not after the fact. Like even if the elder reports something was stolen, but then the perpetrator had no idea that, oh, this belonged to, this Kupuna. So that's some of the problems with those types of cases that we see. But it's still underreported, but not as much as like the in the family dynamics. I think those are like, that's kind of like a category that we're seeing the underreported in. I think that's
Right.
I think
That's
it's
my next
in the
question.
family
Yeah.
dynamics.
I would think that too. So that leads me to my next question. This may be my last one, but I might have one more before we go. But undue influence. So we know as our elders age and there's siblings and there's, family dynamics. And some people that live on the island, there's family members that have moved away. So for undue influence, we know there's, and I don't actually know the laws for the state of Hawaii for wills and things, but we do know that every state has a law for how a will is to be done and if it needs to be probated and how it goes. But for those issues, are you seeing or do you ever get involved? I know usually a lot of those are civil matters, they go to the probate court, but do you ever get involved where it constitutes the crime where it's proven there was undue influence, meaning somebody signed for somebody and that was brought to your office and you guys could confirm that someone made a false signature, or there was a crime where, you know, clearly it was undue influence proven, maybe it was proven in civil court and then brought to your attention? Would you prosecute something like that?
In my time here, I mean, I've only had one case where it was undue influence in the context of like extortion. You know, like I'm going to, yeah, I don't, that case is actually still pending, so I can't really discuss it. But just generally, it was a client of this business and he ended up telling one of the shop owners that if you don't do X repeatedly, then I will beat you up, kind of thing. And so the shop owner ends up going and withdrawing all these sums of money and giving it over.
Mhm.
And then he was too embarrassed to tell anybody, especially his wife, that this was happening to him at work.
So you don't have a lot of statistics on that. That's something I'll also circle back to John on later. I'm wondering, John, if you might ever have that under your perusal, if you've seen or ever looked at. It's hard because you have to go look at the probate cases, but to see, you know, and then you have to know a little bit. So to see if there's any data there that would support where there's reports of undue influence and somebody changes a will or what have you, because those are pretty substantial and those impact not just the families, because families are shattered for that, but the wishes of our Kupuna are not honored. And so those are serious concerns that
We definitely are aware of those things, but we're not a mandated reporter. I mean, we're not the ones who receive those calls. So in a long-term care facility, if somebody feels they've been abused or neglected in some way, they call Adult Protective Services, they call the Office of Healthcare Assurance, but they generally don't call our office. So we only have seen snippets of this.
Yeah, that's what I would have expected. Dale, did you have something? I see you're unmuted.
Well, I don't have that raise hand command on my screen on this tablet. Sorry, so I had to wave. But worth mentioning here, got a few minutes. A few years ago, I shared with Scott Spallina a story up in Washington State where the elderly lady in her 80s went in the hospital. She wasn't expected to come out. While she was there, two nieces in their 60s showed up, got her to sign power of attorney. And they tried but could not get her wedding ring off. They drained her money, sold her house. The doctors did a good job, got her stabilized to release her, but now she was broken and no house. So she filed a police complaint, I believe, and the attorney general prosecuted the two nieces. In my condo, I called the state on a case of elder financial abuse. They did nothing, and I wound up in court accused by the perpetrator of sparing his good name. he got good money. So that's really bad. It's really bad. And later, one of our other owners sent a letter to Governor Linda Lingo at the time. And the governor had the guy an investigation and an examination. They found he was mentally incompetent. So that was I didn't know that rascal had power of attorney over this mentally incapacitated man. He didn't know who the perpetrator was. He's so far gone, you know. But this is really bad. You call the state or the city, you want to get sued, pulled into court by a freaking extortion attorney. It's like calling 911 and getting sued. Well, what's the point? Just watch the crime go down for entertainment purposes. Thank you.
Right. I don't know if you have any comments on that, Anna, but
I really don't. I apologize.
yeah, that's okay. I know there's a lot to there are a lot of things that are some of our board members and others also that come and speak with us
Well,
have gone through in our experiences, and yeah,
okay.
it's been difficult.
I
Do you
gotta
have anything else
gotta
to
say
add,
one
Dale?
more.
Good.
I gotta
Go
say
ahead.
one
Go
more
ahead.
thing here. I use the city prosecutor website to notify them of embezzlement at our condo complex of $200,000. I let them know through their website. I called down there the next day. The guy answered the phone. I could tell he's a young fellow, not old like me. He says, "Oh, you should try legal aid or ask an attorney." Hey, and as far as going to HPD, some of us try that dozens of times. They say, "Oh, an association, hire an attorney, or convince your hundreds of owners that you're right and try to get them to do something about it." Never happened. Never happened. Thank you.
Yeah, there's many stories, and we have unfortunately had some difficult times trying to get traction on addressing some of our concerns at various condo associations and just overall with issues that we perceive. And these issues at condo associations that Dale is referring to also affect many elders because they're getting, in some cases, this mismanagement and fraud. Actually, where Dale used to live at Makaha Surfside had over $330,000 of embezzlement that was proven. And that's still something I think that's under investigation, but that was proven. It was agreed that that was done, and they did a forensic audit. So it's sad because it's extending everywhere. I see that throughout Hawaii. I did want to ask if I could, Anna. You mentioned a 24/7 hotline. I don't know
Yes,
if that's a number you can provide to our membership so that this it's
yes.
posted here or just stated. You don't even have to post it. Just say what it is.
It is a phone number that the Honolulu Police Department will call when someone has been arrested for an alleged crime against a kupuna. However, it's a phone number that can be called. I mean, I think Scott Scalina handed it out a lot. It's 808 590 1059.
I have that, and we can post that too. That goes along with this video in the comments.
Is that a leave a message kind of hotline?
It's actually not really a hotline. It's a 24/7 phone. And so one of us from the team carries the phone for
Nice.
7 days, and then we hand it off to the next person. So someone always has the phone.
That's great.
So don't call 10 times after midnight, especially when
can,
Anna
but
has the
maybe nobody
phone,
will answer.
and she'll never come back and talk to us again. All right. With that, before we part, because we're just about done with our time here, is there anyone else that would like to add a comment or ask a question? Or also, I'm going to give you the last opportunity to make a final statement if you wanted to. But anyone else that is on our Zoom, or are we good? Looks like we're good. So I don't know if there's any last comment you wanted to make before we say goodbye.
No, I thank you very much for having me this morning and afternoon. I've actually learned a lot listening to, questions and feedback and the discussions today. So I thank you for your patience with me as I'm quite new to this area in our prosecution in our office. And, I'll do my best in my capacity here to charge more cases as they come in, and I'm hopeful that, we'll continue to fight together to keep, our city safe. So thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate that. And we're here as your advocate too to help get the word out. And we appreciate you participating with us today. We know you're very busy, and we hope to provide some good inputs later to you, beyond this meeting today or this program, and also with always with our long-term care ombudsman, John McDermott. So we appreciate your time. We thank you for your time. We wish both you and Prosecutor Alm could be here. He's been here with us in the past, but actually it's new insights, and we appreciate you being here today. So thank you so much.
Thank you so
And
much.
yeah, with that, from Kokua Council, if I didn't say it properly in the beginning, again, we're an advocate for our Kupuna, our elders, and also lesser advantaged people that don't always have a voice. So we do appreciate that our members come and ask questions too, and we appreciate that John came today and participated, and we do thank everyone that was able to join us, and we hope that others will watch this and learn from it. So thank you all, and with that, I'm going to say goodbye to everyone, and Doug will be the person that will sign on.
Have a good afternoon. Thank you so much.
Aloha.